This segment of Open Up is brought to you in part by Abeta Weed, the locally owned company that has everything you need for lush, weed-free gardens and lawns, from the smallest backyards to the property of the biggest businesses, and with top quality equipment and products better than the big chains, and they service what they sell. Located on Rosedale Highway, just east of Callaway, across from the promenade. Be loyal, buy local, abetaweed.com.
And just like that, we are back. And like Don likes to say, we're your second favorite pair on the air. And Tina today is back in South Carolina, where she's even hoping to meet with the governor.
I think she's already met with him.
Let it be.
Her, I believe it is.
Let it be.
Well, listen, we're back with Imad Mirza's solo for this segment. Imad and I have talked at length about so many things, spiritual things, religious things, personal things, and he's become a great friend to me. And what we propose to do is, in our own small way, as much as we can, to try to dispel false fears, false stereotypes, and yet still deal with real issues, not to try to run away from those, but deal with them together. And one of the things we have granted to each other, and I think all Americans need to grant to one another, is the absolute right to be absolutely wrong.
Absolutely.
The absolute right to be absolutely wrong, and yet live together in peace as neighbors, as friends. And Imad, I do have a one concern that we've never talked about, and it's this. It's Thomas Jefferson's famous saying, "I have sworn on the altar of God eternal hostility to every form of tyranny over the mind of man," that any form of coercion in religion is satanic. And we hear that in Islam, you do not have the freedom to change your mind or to abandon Islam or to abandon all religions or to become something else other than a Muslim religiously. Speak to that.
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson is somebody that I admire greatly in many ways. George Washington, Ben Franklin, so on and so forth. Islam, subhanAllah, glory be to God, is a religion that absolutely tells you to acquire knowledge, to think freely, to acquire knowledge as far as if you have to go to China to get it. Go to China to get the knowledge. Islam has never shied away from growing in spirituality.
It's the old saying, wear the old coat and buy the new book.
Fair enough, exactly. Now, so Muslims have contributed quite a bit to learning and to understanding and so on and so forth. But in Islam, you're not asked to follow. You're asked to learn for yourself. This is both men and women. Women are asked to learn for themselves. Men are asked to learn for themselves, to be not to be sheep, but to be shepherds. Everyone is a shepherd. The Prophet taught us that everyone is a shepherd, and I don't want to go down the whole list, but everyone is a shepherd means you have a responsibility to have knowledge and know the good from the bad, and so on and so forth. And so Islam advocates that we learn and study and understand and comprehend, especially Islamic law, especially the teachings of the Prophet and history, and so on and so forth. Now we're getting into matters where we're talking about the classical Islamic state or the classical Jewish state or the classical Christian state, okay? And in both of those books, in both of those teachings, apostasy, once you're in that state, once you've been raised a Muslim, a Jew, or a Christian, once you have been taught and understand the good versus the bad and who God is and so on and so forth, you are not then to bring other gods into the picture. Now, if it's something private, if it's something between yourself and your family or so on and so forth, Islam does not mandate dragging a person out of their house. Now, the Bible does mandate that. That is right there in the Torah. If it's your own spouse, you are supposed to, by God's word, take them out. If they mention another God to you, to take them out and present them to the judges, and once the matter is deemed, your hand should be the first one that stones them. Islam, the only time an apostate is problematic is if he becomes public, he's warned, he's in an Islamic state, meaning that state is an Islamic state. It is not going to change. What you're now going to do is try to change it, okay? Stop trying to change it. If you continue, you will be killed.
If you don't want to change it, but just abandon it.
But that's the point. If you make it public, if you now try to speak on that heresy, declare that heresy, say that Islam is wrong, say that Allah isn't God, you are now an enemy of the state, an Islamic theocratic state. Can you do that in the Vatican today? No, you cannot. Could you have done it in Israel anytime the law was ruling the nation? No, you could not. Could you have done it in Christendom throughout the ages.
So
No, you cannot.
Theologically, what is the penalty for someone who has known Islam and walks away?
Well, like I said, it is the threshold is far higher than the biblical threshold.
Well, forget about the
No,
threshold.
no, I can't. We don't take I've said many times, if I'm speaking to Jews and Christians and we're talking about Abrahamic faiths, do not take the Bible off the table.
But
It
this
is
is a
part
sim-
of the argument.
This
okay?
is a simple question.
The answer is simple. In the Bible, it is a much lower threshold for apostasy. In Islam, you have to be actively trying to undermine the Islamic State. Okay, now let me get back to a question that.
Well, hold
But
on.
what you're saying
is simply walking away from the faith undermining the Islamic State?
Walking away, you want to be
Publicly.
banished? You want to just leave the state? Go, by all means.
What,
No one's
what
gonna
is-
prevent you.
What is the penalty?
Abandoning, meaning
Walking
leaving
away
the state?
and making a
There
public
is no
declaration.
penalty.
Making a public declaration. I am no longer a follower of Islam.
That again, today, no penalty.
Okay.
Can Christians today penalize? Can they burn at the stake? Can they burn witches? Can they burn somebody who opposes the Trinity like they did in the old days? Can they use inquisitions? No, they can't. Can the Jews apply their penalties? I said, there are Jews right now, ultra Orthodox Jews in Israel that are angry and they yell at people and they curse them because they're working on the Sabbath. They do not want them working on the Sabbath. They want the law implemented again. Okay.
Understand.
Now, can they do that? No. They live in a secular democracy. Islam, the Sharia itself, teaches us that if commanding the right brings upon more harm, do not command the right. If forbidding the wrong brings upon more harm, do not forbid the wrong. We have that ability to do that. That's why I can live here. That's why I can put on my real face.
I understand.
That's why I can tell you Islam has cutting off of limbs and beheading of a head and so on and so forth. But the threshold that has to be met is beyond understanding. I mean, it's almost like, why did you have the law if the threshold is that severe? Okay? So it sounded like when we were listening to Stafford Betty that the Quran is just all about cutting and killing and Hindus and this and that and the other. If you look at the 13th centuries when Islam had some form of power, did you see the pyramids destroyed? Did you see all these these works that these nutballs are destroyed? Islam was in control of all these areas. Did you see the Buddha destroyed? Did you see people did you see wanton slaughter, just line them up and let's just kill them the way Genghis Khan did or the way others did and the way some Christians did and so on? In the Crusades, there was a wanton slaughter. When the Muslims opened Jerusalem, was there a wanton slaughter? Come on, let's be honest with ourselves. When the Jews, after the Crusaders, came into Jerusalem, when the Jews crossed North Africa to get to the Iberian Peninsula, I asked the professor, why did they go to the Iberian Peninsula? Oh, professor, why? Why did the Jews themselves, cross North Africa to get to Spain? I ask you two men, why?
Just a reminder.
Why?
Just a reminder.
I don't know.
It's
Why?
It's 2015.
Doesn't matter.
Sure, it does.
History.
Oh no.
Okay,
that is everything.
I'll answer that. Okay, so they went there because there was an Islamic State there, and they knew they could be protected there, and they knew they wouldn't be compelled to convert. They knew they would receive their rights, and they did, and they enjoyed their golden age in a Muslim state. This is not contestable. This is historically accurate. This is fact. Okay, not fiction. Now, when we talk about the 2015,
Yes.
right? Circumstances and timing and situations is in a lot of cases everything. But I'll ask you this, Don: would you rather have learned from Jesus directly and his disciples, or from the church today?
Jesus.
Thank you. So first century, pretty important century for you.
Yes,
huh?
yes.
Same with the 7th century, buddy. If I could have learned from Muhammad and Umar and Abu Bakr and some of the best, boy, would I ever want to be doing that right now.
Tell us a bit more about Omar. You mentioned him, the number 2 man in Islam after Muhammad. And,
Well, he's my all-time hero. Absolutely.
And tell us why. Tell us why.
Second to the prophets, after the prophets and the messengers, there's Abu Bakr, who's without a doubt number 1. But Omar, for the comprehensive nature of his life. He was a very strong and stern man. People feared Omar before he became the caliph. He was very stern and very tough, and when he became the caliph, he became very merciful and very kind. And people asked him why, and he said, because the Prophet and Abu Bakr were so merciful and kind that I had to be stern and tough, but now that they're gone, I have to be very kind and merciful. This is a man who wore one garment most of the time. This is a man that when he did go to Jerusalem, he rode on one donkey with one servant, and they had to share because this, if you have a servant, you must feed him from what you eat, clothe him from what you clothe, and do the same work you ask him to do. Okay, that's Islam. And Omar was, at the time they came to Jerusalem, it was the servant's turn to ride on the donkey, and the servant said, "Oh, Omar, you're the commander of the faithful. It's not befitting that you should be walking me." And he said, "It's your right, your God-given right." Servant on the donkey, Omar holding the reins. When the leaders of Jerusalem, the Christian leaders, saw that, they knew that was the man they were going to give the key of the city to.
Wow.
They knew that. Okay.
We need to take a break. When we come back, Stafford will rejoin us, and we've got a lot more questions. I'm sure you do too, and hope we can answer some of them. We'll be right back. Thanks for being with us for this.